Okay, part 3, probably the most important part for your practical, and that's how do you include your results and also how to include a table. Now, your table is really important. I've got a picture here. We want a title, which says a little bit about what your table is about. So in this case, it's results showing the time taken to dissolve at different temperatures of water. And we always have our independent variable on the left side and our dependent variable on the right. We have our label with our units, our label with our units every single time. And then we run down with the trials that we had. So this is our independent variable, what we're changing, the temperature of water. So we're changing temperature of water, and this is what we're measuring, the dissolving time. Now if you did this maybe 3 times, then you would have another couple of boxes and then one for the average. So you would have trial 2, trial 3, and an average, like that, and dissolving time would be put across the top of all of those trials. So dissolving time would be moved into that box. Okay. Now, if you want to get really technical and you want to have really pretty tables, it's recommended that you only have horizontal lines to separate your data, no vertical lines. But your teacher probably won't care about that. Okay, so here I've taken a little video about how to actually make graphs in a couple of different programs. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so here we're using Google Sheets, and the reason I like Google Sheets is because it's free. So again, on the left we've got our independent variable, and on the right we've got our dependent variable. And you'll notice that it's a label and units. So all we're going to do is copy all of that data, and we're going to go down to chart, and we're going to pick the appropriate chart. Now in science, most of the time it's going to be a scatter, an XY scatter, so we're going to look for that. So we're going to scroll down, click on scatter, and insert, and there's our graph. You notice it will try and put in some of the stuff that we want, but if it's not right, we can edit those ourselves. So in this case, we've got a y-axis that doesn't start at 0. We generally want it to start at 0. So you can click on that scale and then change the minimum to 0, and that's going to adjust your graph. We make sure that we've got a horizontal label with units and a vertical label with units, and we like to see a line of best fit. So in this case, you click on your data and go add line, and you pick the appropriate one, in this case probably linear. Then if you want to see how correlated that particular line is, we can add the R² value, which shows how much of a connection between those two variables exist. And you can see this is a 0.987, which means it's 98% correlated, so really strong correlation. And you can see that in the data anyway. Well, what about in Excel? Very similar. We have the same independent variable, dependent variable, we highlight it, we go to charts, and we pick XY scatter. If you have any problems with this, just leave a comment below and I can help you through whatever program you're using. Again, very simple version. We need to add our y-axis label, our horizontal axis label. We need to add our line of best fit. We need to check our scale to make sure they're all right, and we need to give it a good title. So I'm just going to do all those things now. If your program doesn't look exactly the same as mine, the parts are still the same, they just might be located in a different section. So here I'm adding the y-axis title, and you can see it appear there. Always include the units. On the bottom, I'll include the vertical axis title, the horizontal axis title, again making sure the units are there. And then I'm going to go up and add a line of best fit. And again, the great thing about using a computer is it accurately plots those points for you. However, if you're doing it by hand, the process is exactly the same. You're just going to make sure you have all those things exactly the same. Put in that R² value, and even this one's got an equation. So you can actually use that equation to interpolate or extrapolate and get a reading for data that you haven't even measured yet. And given that that's a 98% correlation, we'd be pretty confident with that extrapolation. Okay, and finally just adding a title. And then when you want to include those into your report, you just copy and then paste them into your document. Okay, and that's it for graphs. So what you should have is a graph that looks beautiful like this. So just a reminder, we want labels, units, accurate plot, so that's accurate data points. We want a line of best fit or a trend line, and we want a title, and we want to make sure the scale is correct. Now, any online sort of computers graphing software is going to do the scale for you, but it's really important that when you do it by hand, that each one of these points are the same. So that's 15, 15 to 30 is 15, 30 to 45 is 15, and so on. That scale is consistent. Okay, so now we've got our table, we've got our graph. Now we need to analyze them and describe them to the audience exactly what's happening. Okay, so basically we just look for the connection between the two variables. For example, at 10 degrees Celsius, the dissolving time was 46.2 seconds. This increased to, this decreased to 42.1 seconds at 15 degrees. And you just work through all of your results, talking about the highs, the lows, the percentage changes, the range, and then ask your teacher for a bit of extra help about what detail they want you to go into for your particular year level. When we go to our figure, we then turn our attention to the relationship between those two, and we start looking at the trend. Is there a connection? As temperature increases, does dissolving time increase or decrease? And in this time, it's negatively correlated. And then we can add in some statistics or looking at correlations and lines of best fit as well. So it's really important that we're just analysing for this relationship, but we're not explaining why. Okay, so that's graphing and tables. Hope that helped. If it did, thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll catch you in part 4.